Welcome to the TSC Football Academy Podcast, where we dive deep into modern coaching approaches and player development.
Today we were lucky enough to be joined by Mark Robinson. Mark's had spells at AFC Wimbledon, Burton Albion and Chelsea FC.
Please subscribe, like and share. Hope you enjoy the pod.
First of all, Mark, thanks very much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
We really appreciate you coming down and taking the time. So massive thanks for that. Just want to get started really talking a little bit about sort of your journey up into when you arrived at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
And sort of starting that off within, because I believe it was a grassroots. Wimbledon was more of a grassroots sort of setup at the start.
Yeah.
And just wanted to just have a bit of a chat first and foremost about how that opportunity came your way at the start at Wimbledon.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a long story, Joe, so I won't go right the way back, but basically sort of come out of football when I got injured at 16, and then was working uptown at various jobs. But I'd say everything I did from getting injured to this opportunity kind of started to impact me as a person, how I used to think about football and coaching. But I got to a stage basically where I wanted to get back into football, I wanted to coach. It was quite difficult because I was doing well at work. I had a really good job. I had 2 little ones at the time as well. And decided the only way I could do it was to open a business with my wife, which we were going to do. But just before that, I just had a chance meeting with someone I played with at Fulham. He was a couple of years older than me, and he was working at AFC Wimbledon. But like you said, AFC Wimbledon were in the Ryman Prem then, so all the lads were just playing Sunday League football, against teams like Epsom Eagles, Sheen Tigers, that sort of stuff. So it was all. So the first team were Ryman Prem, and it was just a normal Sunday league. And I just said to him, look, I really want to start coaching. And he said, well, I'll do the under-9s down at AFC Wimbledon. Just come down. So I thought, brilliant. I was doing a bit of community work at Crystal Palace at the time and stuff like that. And I thought, great, I'll do it. So that's what I did. I went down there with this group of under-9s, and he gave me free rein, to be fair to him. He's a great guy called Tony Wilson. And he kind of just went, go and do what you do. So I had all these ideas around how I wanted to coach and how I thought it should be. And he gave me free rein to do it. And that's how it started, but it led on to other things.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's great to hear from you, like just understanding that journey to begin with.
Yeah.
Just firstly, a question from what you just said there. Obviously, with you had your 2 little ones in your family. How did you to begin with? How did you find that difficult? Was that a difficult task, juggling up family life as well as coaching a lot? Because I certainly know that's something that we find quite difficult at times.
Yeah, it was. It was tough because when I got injured, I didn't fall out of love of football. I just didn't want to be near it because I always wanted to be a player. So when I couldn't play, I didn't want to be around it. I didn't think, I want to go into coaching, So I went down a different pathway and was doing well at work. I was earning good money, but then I ended up coaching the work team that I worked for. Again, I don't want to go over old ground basically they used to play the Dutch version of what we did, and they used to go over Holland every year and get absolutely smashed. So they asked me to do some coaching sessions for them. So I did 6 or 7 sessions in Regent's Park, and we went over to Holland and we played at the old Ajax Arena. Anyway, they won 4-2, and the elation from them, and the Dutch guys were like, hey, what's going on here? What's happened? So all of a sudden I got this love, and I just thought, wow, this is what I'd want to do. So, but I had that problem. I've got 2, I think my kids were 1 and 3. I was doing well at work, and it was like, well, how do you do this? How do you start? Because you lose all your contacts in football. You can't just walk into a coaching job and earn money, as you guys know. So it was like, how do I do this? So my wife said, look, if you really want to do it, why don't we open our own business? So we borrowed 6 figures to open a business. It was like a children's venue. So it was like Soft Play meets Cafe Nero. And I look back now, it was nuts, when I look back. But at the time, when you want to do something, you just think, I'm going to do it. And my daughter's going through the same process now. She's 25 and she's opening her own business, and it's quite funny. She's nervous about certain things. So, but we just did it, and our mindset was, I'll probably be at the business for the first year to keep costs down. and then fingers crossed, hopefully I can start coaching more and more. But like you said, it was a challenge. You know, it was a real challenge because I'm doing a bit of coaching, I'm doing the business, my wife's running the business, we've got 2 little ones, so you know I can't say it was easy, but I think if you want something badly enough, you're happy to do it. And I don't really like the word sacrifices because I think if you want to do something, you're committed to it. So I don't look at it as sacrifices. I just look at it as in this is what we wanted to do. We had a way of doing it, and you commit to it, and you know along the way that certain things have to give, but you hope it's going to be worthwhile, which it was.
Yeah, it's really interesting that story and understanding the kind of background. We had a friend. I say we had a friend. We've still got a friend. He's out in Saudi Arabia at the moment, coaching out there. But he was with us for a good number of years, and he's kind of dedicated his whole career to becoming full-time in football. Yeah. And I think we've both gone through that stage where it's like, well, that's kind of what we really want to do. But it's then juggling up that family life as well and having a life outside of football because, as you know, it can just take over everything. So yeah, it's really interesting kind of and good advice for
and I'd say
coaches.
that, Alex, I probably, if I lost the balance at one stage, and you know, I think it's important for any young coaches out there who are watching this. There was a stage where probably I lost the balance and it affected my wife and our relationship for a little while, and we had to sit down and readdress that because we were literally like passing ships in the night. She's running the business, I'm doing football, and we weren't seeing each other. And you kind of forget why you were doing it all, if that makes sense, because you were doing it all because, one, you wanted to sort of fulfil your own purposes, but at the same time, you did that because you had such great support from each other. And all of a sudden, it was like we forgot about that because fundamentally you do it because of how you are as a couple as well and what you want for your kids. And you know, and I think you have to be mindful of that and keep that balance because it can go off in a direction you don't want it to go off in. You know?
100%.
Absolutely. Just sort of going back to the Wimbledon stuff. Just want to ask a few. Just dive into your mind a little bit on that. Could you just sort of go through specifically when at Wimbledon, sort of what age groups you was involved in? Because obviously you was there for a number of years. Yeah. And then sort of what challenges you encountered while being at the club, in terms of sort of maybe like resources and stuff like that.
Well, it was, I think, 18 and a half years in total. So my first session literally was coach for goals. So, and I mean, it was coach for goals. Putting down your coach for goals, it was at the back of Corinthian Casuals. You know, there's that park around the back. I know it was there. And I got to meet these 14, 15, under 9 lads. And initially it was just them. It was just the focus. Tony gave me the free will to try these things out that I believed in around ownership, letting players do their own warm-ups, you know, because I was a big believer. You look at your own coaching pathway and you look at when you felt great as a player, when things were going great, and maybe when things didn't go so well. And I looked at the influences in my life and what, you know, so I'm a big believer that you give people ownership, they empower them. And I know we're only talking about 9-year-olds here, so it was baby steps, but I believe that kids are bright and you know, they can really surprise you. So a lot of it in the early stages was around that. Obviously we wanted to play in a certain way and we wanted to produce really confident lads who were comfortable on the ball. So the training, there was a lot of technical stuff. But my main focus for a little while was just on these under 9s, and that's what it was for a couple of years. And they didn't win loads of football matches to begin with. They were kind of 3rd or 4th early on. Used to get things like, you know, at that level you'd play the opposition and the big quick lag would be goal hanging up front because there's no offside. So I'd get things like I'd get the goalkeeper to mark the centre forward if they were doing that, so that we could play and get over loads further up the pitch, and we'd lose games because we'd lose it and then kick it upfield and around the keeper. So then you've got to deal with parents who possibly wanted to win the game, and you have to explain why you're doing stuff. But it kind of really turned when we went to 11-a-side. So we went to 11-a-side, and all this stuff that I'd been doing, they just started going on this winning spree. And I have to emphasise, listen, we all want to win football matches. If you don't want to win, why are you doing it? But it was always about developing the players. But we went on this winning spree of, you know, in the end it was 104 successive wins. But after sort of 20, 30 wins, it started to get noticed. And then the guy who headed off the football section, youth section, called Nigel Higgs, the first team are now in the Conference South, and he wanted to kind of get the youth structure ready for if the first team got back into the professional leagues. So he said he needed someone to set that up and start that. So he asked me if I would do that. That included getting an agreement with a college, which was Merton College at the time, so we could have an under-19s team that went to college, because at that time the youth teams used to play in a midweek league, so they were at college or whatever, or some of them worked during the day and then they'd come and play of an evening. So he wanted to set up this full-time training program. You know, a lot like things have taken off now, but we're going back sort of 20 odd years ago.
Yeah.
So and there was a league that was just forming called, I think it was the Conference Youth Alliance League. I think it was just forming at the time, and he wanted to get in that. So if you look at that, there was so much change. So we had parent managers everywhere. So I had to try and start drip feeding in coaches, which obviously caused issues because the parents are really passionate, lovely people, but the club didn't have a great discipline record because it was all about winning. So there was navigating around that, trying to put in a coaching program that kind of was going to start running through the age groups, getting the coaches in, and this was all being done on a shoestring. Very little money. So all those processes, trying to build an identity, trying to build a culture around the club. So fan-owned club. So it was everything really. But the key thing for me was getting the culture right first of what we were going to look like and what was important to us, getting the standards and values set, and then building everything around that. So Nigel really wanted to develop people as well as players. So that was really key. So it was like a massive overhaul, and in terms of challenges, you get all the challenges, kind of people don't like change, and they can be negative against change, and why aren't we doing it like that, and this won't work, and so there was plenty of challenge, but I was very clear on how I knew it needed to go, and I believed in how it was going to work. So you just have to navigate that. But what I would say is, what then come into play was all the jobs I did outside of football, if that makes sense. And I think the big key thing for me is because I didn't have I played at possibly the highest levels you could as a youth player, but because I didn't have a career, and I'm sure you guys feel, you do have to fill in the gaps as a coach. When you haven't had a playing career, I don't run with this that you don't need to. I do think it leaves gaps in your coaching if you haven't had a career and you haven't played at certain levels. So I've had to work hard to fill in those gaps, and I'm not saying you can fill them in entirely, but by having a growth mindset, visiting places, when you are with professional players, like picking their brains, you do everything you can to fill in those gaps. But I'd also say that my journey, which was quite different, and the jobs I did and the people skills I picked up, also give me skills to navigate around the issues that I faced around people not wanting change, if that makes sense. Yeah. So, which would probably say to me, I think the more diverse your journey is, or the more diverse you make it, I think all those different skill sets help you along the way.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've been involved in Gillingham's Academy, and whenever we played AFC Wimbledon, we've always noticed that, and we both agreed on this when we were chatting before, that Wimbledon players are different. Yeah. And I think that comes from a lot from the coaching programme, about being good people off the pitch and good players on the pitch, and having that player ownership programme, I think, massively helped. Yeah. Are there any sort of strategies you've put in place from each phase, so the foundation, youth development, professional development phase? Are there any sort of key sort of strategies or processes that you found have worked in each phase to try and accelerate player development and try and give them sort of player ownership, if that kind of makes sense? Yeah,
it was. If I'm honest, if I look back now, because again I was learning as a coach, I wouldn't say it was specific to each phase, because we had different hook lines we worked under. So we had better people make better dons. So dons is Wimbledon's nickname. So that was kind of our hook line for all our social, cultural stuff that we did. and everyone worked under that. It obviously would look slightly different at different age groups. Then we had our winners do more, which was basically the ownership. So that was like, well, there aren't enough hours in the day for us to give you everything, so you've got to take certain ownership of your program, and that would filter down in terms of, you know, the homework we'd give players, and again, that might look different to your under 9s to what it would to your under 17s, under 18s, if that makes sense. And then we had the two-footed program, which was a technical program, which I've talked about before, where every player wore a different colour sock, so they wore a different colour sock on their weaker foot, and they were trying to earn the right to wear the same sock. So, and what we had as well, we had a mentorship program that filtered down from the younger player, from the older players to the younger players. So I can't specific, if I'm honest, go, well, at under 9s it looked like that.
Yeah.
You know, there was always the player-led warm-ups, there was always the player-led games as we moved on, you know, at different degrees. It was more about, this is what we look like from top to bottom. And it was more about how the coaches handled their phase. So obviously at foundation phase there was a big emphasis on, you know, the players enjoying it and how it looked and stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
But I can't say, oh no, under 9s, under 10s, it was specifically that, and then it changed because we were kind of discovering our own way as we went along.
Yeah.
You know, there was probably more of that once we become a professional academy.
Yeah.
And we started looking at different things, you know.
Yeah, I think like touching on what you're saying is it's really important to kind of create that culture first. And however you do it, you obviously implemented similar strategies throughout every phase, and it's then just consistently having that approach and making sure the coaches kind of making sure they follow it and they deliver it differently for ages.
Exactly, and it was the way we coached Al, really. So, you know, you kind of, it's like I was big on not giving them all the answers at whatever age group, you know, to make sure there was that kind of guided discovery as well, and working under principles rather than strict stop, stand still, you do this, you do that. So that freedom, you know, but I'd be lying if I'd go, oh, it looked like this totally in the foundation phase, and then it moved to this, and then it moved to this. It was more an overriding thing of how we just dealt with everything. But what I would say is, and I think we make this, when I look back now, I think our lads, because of that, they grew up quicker, but not in a bad way. People don't like it when you say that, because if you let them be kids, let them be kids, and they were kids. But I do think they grew up quicker. So when they got to 13, 14, I did feel our lads were more mature in a way, but not in a bad way, in a good way. You know, they were they enjoyed responsibility a lot more. They actually relished accountability a lot more, which I don't think's a bad thing. You know, so, and again, that was just because it was more of an overriding program.
Yeah. We always have chats, don't we, about when we've the experiences through our academy, and we always say, like, Wimbledon players, like, from our experience, have always been a lot more mature when we've played against them, or a lot more streetwise, and can solve decisions better than our players could.
Okay, that's good to know.
So it was always a benchmark that when we played Wimbledon, that it was how we performed was quite like a benchmark, was always kind of like we really want to do against Wimbledon, because we know it's a good target as such.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously you fellas are younger as well, but you know, we had to go through that journey. So when we first got into the League Two as a club, it was Centre of Excellence, and it wasn't even Academy and EPPP. So we had to get Centre of Excellence status first and foremost, and we had that decision then, because all our lads were Sunday League. So we're like, right, okay, what do we do? Do we take our Sunday League boys into Centre of Excellence football, where we know we've got culture, lads who understand and love the club, but it's probably going to be a real big step up? Or do we take, you know, we weren't really at that point going to get Chelsea's releases, Arsenal's, we're talking about, you might get QPR's, Orient's. Do we take those releases? And we made the decision to stick with our own boys, because we thought the culture was more important than anything else. All of a sudden you flood your academy set up with like 40 releases, you've got to start again. So we knew the boys got the club and understood the club. And we had some good players there, you know, but we knew it'd be if at that point our best age groups would have been at 13 and 14, no, 14 and 15. So we knew at the top end it was going to be a struggle, but we'd probably be all right at certain age groups. So me doing the youth team was tough. I mean, I think our first game we played Southend, and at that point I'd say it was very different. So when we went in, the clubs we were looking at were Southend were doing well, Gillingham, Orient, and Luton. Like Luton were. So those academies, you kind of looked at them and thought, wow, like they're doing good stuff. So our benchmark was how quickly can we get up to there? And I remember first game Southend, we went 1-0 up after 3 minutes. I'm thinking, oh, this is all right. We ended up losing like 5-1. And then we went to Millwall, who were also good. We went Millwall for them, went 1-0 up after I think 30 seconds and lost 8-1. So you're like, wow, okay, welcome to... Yeah. And I think it was our 11th game we won. Not that I remember this stuff. Yeah, we beat Barnet 1-0, and it was like a real ugly game. But the feeling of getting our first win, and then we kind of grew from there. And you're right, and I don't mind saying over time, and I've spoke to guys at Gillingham who I know well, and Orient and Luton, and they said, and Southend, who become good friends, who helped me along the way as well, who said, 5-6 years down the line, we were then looking at Wimbledon, and that become our big game. So, which was a fantastic journey to go on, really good journey to go on.
Yeah, absolutely. Just touching back on, obviously, Alex just mentioned about the strategies and different things that you implemented or was a part of at Wimbledon. We speak a lot about the developing of the players, obviously, and the different programs to influence the players, but just sort of wanted to just pick your brains on the levels of coach development and what you did to develop your other coaches. You spoke a little bit there about inheriting parents as coaches, and sort of just going a little bit deeper into that. Was there any parents that maybe actually stayed on at the club but needed a little bit more, maybe more of a coach education? And how did that look at Wimbledon? Yeah,
no, there was a couple of parents that did stay on because they showed real good leadership. They had real good leadership qualities, and at the time I thought you could be really influential in what we're doing. So, they did stay on for a while because obviously I was having to take on younger coaches. The resources were minimal. I was trying to entice people to come on this journey. We're going on this exciting journey. We're selling the story of Wimbledon. But obviously, as you lads would know, the money's not great. So you're getting young coaches, and I thought these two guys would really... One was Tony, another guy called Steve Dormer, and I thought they would really help me in terms of, they had their own... They were doing well in business. They just had real qualities that I thought would filter down, So that was a real help. And if I'm honest, Joe, at first it was tough in terms of developing the coaches. It was a lot myself, Jeremy Sawyer, who was on board with the younger ones, and then I brought Michael Hamilton in from Millwall, and it was more about us trying to educate them, educate the programme. As we grew, then obviously we got to put on more CPDs, and we try and arrange visits and stuff. But what I would say is we didn't do loads of club visits, because what was key to us was we knew we weren't getting the best young players. That was just the nature of the beast. We know the best players are going to the bigger clubs. So it was more about, well, how are we going to produce professional footballers? So we were very much like, well, if we're running the same programme as every other Cat 3 as it was then, if we're not getting the best players, then why do we think we're going to produce loads of players? So, we really hit on the areas where we thought is going to give us the best chance. So the two-footed thing was, a bit of an obsession of mine, being a very one-footed player, and how that not just limited me, to be honest. A lot of it was around injury prevention as well, because my injury stemmed from the fact that I was so one-sided, and I learned how important it is to have equilibrium in your body and equal strength, and not just for the decision-making side of football, but just the fact of having that strength both sides can be great for injury prevention. So that became a really key thing, and it proved right, because we had lots of players. We had a left back who made his debut at right back because he was very proficient on both feet. We had a right-sided centre-back made his first team debut at left centre-back because he was proficient. So it did help us produce players. But then the other bit was around the social psych stuff. and that was the ownership program and everything that we did around that. We just felt that could really give us a massive edge. So like you said, you know, people saying Wimbledon boys are different. We thought, you know, well, when they go on their first loan, we want them to be able to handle things like that better. And that was the two key elements we focused on. So when we did coach development, it was more around those things, if that makes sense, rather than just going, we'll go to that club and see what they do. You know, we'd rather send them off to a rugby club where there'd be more ownership, that sort of stuff. So we'd send them to play or send them to visit an individual sportsman. You know, my mate was a professional cyclist, so, you know, I'd share things around that and how he trained. And because fundamentally, when I look at academies and what you're trying to do and what you fellas are trying to do, you've got a team set up, but in reality also what you're trying to do is hand over a player and go, look, he's ready to go and play first team football. You're not handing over 11 players and going, here's a team gaffer. You're going, this player we think is good enough to go into what you do. And I think you have to remember that. You know, you really are developing an individual in a team structure. The game really is just the vehicle to show the development of that player. So that's where a lot of the CPD stuff was around. It was around how we can keep improving our program and how the coaches could understand our, I guess you'd call it methodology now, wouldn't you? Didn't have that word. But, you know, how they understood why we did what we did. You know what I mean? Rather than, so that's what the CPD would have been around. You know, hence we were talking earlier when we got a bite to eat about getting Eddie Jones in and that, you know, because he was massive on ownership. So that message was consistent.
At TSC Football Academy, we offer a fantastic post-16 football scholarship programme, giving opportunities for full-time football and education. For more information about our programme and for the next trial dates, please look on our website and our socials. So we just spoke about, you mentioned about Eddie Jones, and before the pod we went and had a little bite to eat, and we were speaking about Eddie Jones, and you went to visit Eddie Jones in his sessions at England Rugby, and I think you come away from it quite overwhelmed and probably kind of mind blown about the level of detail that the sessions went into. And also probably the way that the players drove that session and led that session, and they were so fully focused on every minute detail. How, when you come away from that, how did that make you feel as like a...
It was, well, I think again that's, we go back to the CPDs and improving yourself. You know, it's very easy when you're leading something like you guys are, you're leading your own academy here, you've got to keep developing yourself. So, you know, Eddie Jones come in via Alf Gullerstein, which was great, and like you said, he was very complimentary about what we do, and he invited us, myself and Michael Hammond, to go back to there to watch them train at Pennyhill Park. And it's very easy to go, oh, I'm busy, which you are, you know, and not, but you've got to do these things, and you know, and make other people accountable to lead when you're not there. So we were lucky to go in, and again, I expected to see an ownership program, but then when you see the levels there that was going on, how he was as a person, how he managed a room at lunchtime, even little things like that, how he walked around the room and had little conversation with players, I'm just like fascinated. Thinking, what's he saying now? What's he saying now? You see players' shoulders go back and chests go out, but yeah, just you know, we talk about ownership, and I'm sure you've had this when you've coached at football, you know, you do a session, you have that break when you're going to your next session football, and players start smashing balls here, there and everywhere where you want the balls ready to go to the next bit. And you went there, and I would say there was not a second wasted. And people were like, oh, is it a bit robotic? It wasn't robotic. It was like, no, we're training for an hour and a half. We're training for an hour and a half. When they went back to have their lunch and that, brilliant, having a laugh, downtime, fun. But when they were training, there was not a second wasted. And the players went bang, bang, knew exactly where they were going. When they were doing the line out. So if you compare line outs to maybe us doing throw-ins or set pieces, you know how sometimes people can lose focus or lose concentration. like everyone was switched on. You know, I'm watching and everyone switched on. And in the line out, there's probably only 3 or 4 players involved in like the lift, the thing, and then what happens. But everyone is listening because they know how vital it is to retain possession, etc. So one, it was just how the players behaved and the detail in terms of his big thing. It was a Thursday session, so that when it went into the 20-minute game session, they needed the levels to go above the intensity they were going to face on Saturday. So there was no scrums. So the ball was constantly going in because it was all about the intensity of that 20-minute block. So balls were constantly being fed in. So not only were the balls constantly being fed in, they were dipping them in buckets of water because the weather forecast for Saturday was heavy rain. So you stand there, wow.
Talk about detail.
Exactly. You know, so, and this was ongoing. I'm trying to think, there was so many, just from this one visit, there were so many things. I was there all day with them. So there was that. Then you talk about extras. You know, I've witnessed things at elite level. Comes to extras in football, everyone goes and practice free kicks, and you go, hold on, I'm sure there's only probably 1 or 2 free kick takers here, and I've got 9 lining up to take free kick, or you've got 10 penalty takers, okay? Or do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas there, bang, extras, everyone went off to go and improve on what they do. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, whereas that's what we'd expect. We want wingers to go off and practice crossing, or fullbacks to go off and 1v1 defence. Everyone just went off on their own, practicing what they do, you know, their expertise to get better. So there was that. And then even little things. So I hadn't met the players then, or Mike, who was with me, and we're probably standing 40 yards away from the dressing room to one side, you know, so not 10 yards away, good 40, watching players come in, and I promise you, with no briefing at all, every single player come over, shook hands, introduced themselves before they went back in the thing. You know, so we talk about, and you're like, wow, okay.
This is a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and I sat in the car with Mike, and I didn't know whether to feel like because we thought we were doing all right, you know, and we sat in the car and looked at each other and went, okay, there's levels and there's levels, you know. I know it's a different sport, but that's how we wanted Wimbledon to feel, you know, as well as other things we took from the All Blacks, like sweeping the dress rooms and all that stuff. So, you know, we went back and we thought, no, we got to raise our game even more, which we did. And, you know, little things, I'm trying to give you examples, you know, even little things in training, when I'd turn up at training and lads they'd warm up and they'd take their tops off and they'd throw them on the floor. We changed things like that, you know, as in, don't disrespect your badge. You lay your top out, your Wimbledon badge is facing up. You know what I mean? You don't screw it up and put it. Dugouts kept better. You know, just standards, just standards.
Yeah.
And that just took us to another level, and made us think around what ownership really looks like, you know, and what processes behind it really look like. How do you get to that level? And what I loved about it was there was loads of ownership, but it was still really authentic. So, you know, because I love the camaraderie of football as well. You want all that, but also you want people to be themselves. And what I liked is that all happened. So training was on a different level. Detail was on a different level. In terms of how they treated us, different level. But then when we got inside and started eating, it was a laugh. And there was funny things happening. And do you know what I mean? You thought, well, it's not... It's human. Now we're humans again. And it's authentic, and you see people's character. And that's what I love about it, because that, you know, you don't want a sterile. You want it authentic. You want to know everyone's different. You want all that, but at the same time, when you go out to train and when you're learning, you're all there to get better. Otherwise, what's the point in doing it?
Go on, no, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to touch on. I mean, we attended the CPD a couple of weeks ago, and that was, you spoke about massively about train as you play, and I think, talking of like the England, how the way they trained and that 20-minute block that you mentioned in kind of getting ready for the game on the Saturday. Yeah. I think that's so important about how you drive in that intensity to train the way you play. And on the CPD, you mentioned that quite a lot at Chelsea. There was real driving standards from your leaders within the group. Yeah. And that kind of also stems back to player ownership as well, I suppose, really, which I know you're a massive believer in the player ownership, and you've obviously introduced your own sort of framework, the rule of three, which I'd love to talk about, and it's something that we're trying to implement with our current group.
Yeah.
What kind of real benefits? Can we sort of like speak about how that works, the rule of three framework in driving standards and ownership?
Yeah, I mean, if we go back and you look at why it's important, again, we go right back to when I started talking to you, and we talk about filling those gaps in your knowledge. So, you know, we haven't played at top level football, so you look and you go, well, at top level, why on a match day, how do these players go out and they're outperforming each other? So, again, that come from Eddie Jones. He said he went in with Pep Guardiola, I think, when he was at Barcelona, and he said, like, the levels of training there influenced him, right? So you start, you know, in terms of the intensity of what they did, how they did the rondos and stuff like that. So you've already got a top-level coach visiting another top-level coach and going, okay, so so there are levels. So you then look and go, well, how do we get to these levels? You know, and since my days at Wimbledon, speaking to John Terry, you know, he's told me their intensity at training was so way beyond sometimes match day. So he's up against Didier Drogba, having to deal with Drogba, who trained like an animal. So often on a Saturday Premier League games, he's going out and it felt quite comfortable. And that's the whole point of training, right? As well as the tactical side, you want to take your behaviours, your elite behaviours, possibly beyond where it's going to be Saturday. Roy Keane was a big one. He said at Man United, you know, their Thursday session was so intense, and the levels, again, Saturdays would often feel easier. So you look at, go, well, this is vital, because it's something I'd never experienced. I've experienced it at youth level, but I only experienced it at the top level. So you go, well, this is clearly a vital ingredient. How are you going to get there? How are you going to get it? And my big thing is, well, I don't want it being driven by me, because when it comes to a match day, you know, it's not driven by the manager. You know, I know enough to know that you're in front of 20, 30,000 or even 4,000 people. You know, it's got to come from the players. So you then look at your ownership programme and how can you drive it. So we had certain things, but I felt it was quite, if I'm honest, I felt a lot of the intensity was driven by the coaches, and I was looking for this missing element, because I felt like it was a bit of a roller coaster. Some weeks we were great and it felt the players were driving it more. Sometimes it wasn't. So I felt, this is my personal view, was some games there was more intrinsic motivation, depending who we were playing, Gillingham or in other games maybe it wasn't as much. There was more extrinsic motivation. So it was like, how do I educate this more intrinsic motivation into players? So Jeff Noonan, who's a FA coach tutor, as you know, he told me about this guy who did this elite behaviour thing, and his surname was Bennett, so excuse me if he's watching, but anyway, he said come along and watch it. And again, the reason I'm going long-winded about this, because it goes about improving yourself. I've turned up at this event around elite behaviours. I was the only football coach there with Jeff. Basketball, cricket, rugby, hockey, only football coach there, right? And it's because the guy, I believe, didn't come from a football background. He come from a military background. So he talked about this thing called the rule of three and how you implemented it, and it just fascinated me. So it was around, you know, so basically to keep the analogy brief, because I know I'm talking a lot, his analogy, he didn't reveal he was from military till the end, by the way. He just said, you know, if you don't have elite behaviours in the military, and you don't take control of situations, you pay the ultimate consequence, right? Yeah. So I'm like, you know, things like that, I'm going, wow, okay, fair enough. So I looked at what he did, and as coaches, we all steal things, right? Yeah. And I just adapted it, tried to make it simpler for football, because we all want flow to our sessions. We don't want it too stop-start. And I thought, well, how can I incorporate this rule of three into what we do, because I felt it would give our players more intrinsic motivation. So that was it really. So I had to adapt it. I tried it on my daughter's team first. So I'd never coached them, I never got involved, but they used to finish sort of bottom of the league, and I said to the coach, he was more than happy. He said, of course, I'd love you. So I went and introduced it to them. Unbelievable. So that gave me the confidence to introduce it to Wimbledon. They actually ended up winning the double, so they went from bottom of the league to winning the double. based on this behavioural elite behaviours, and then I brought it into the academy. So it's very simple, and it's based around positive reinforcement, putting demands on each other, and then having a refocus, basically. So what you're encouraging in, you start the session, but let's say we're working on counter pressing. You decide on the behaviours that are key to make this session realistic, and no more than 3. You don't want more than 3. It might only be 1 sometimes, and you pick whatever they are and you hand them over to the players. You go, I'm not coaching this. I'll coach a little bit of detail, but in terms of this, to make this session realistic, you're taking control, and you're taking control by positive reinforcement. When you do it well with your teammates, you keep telling each other how brilliant you're doing it. If someone's slacking off, you put demands on him. And we're not talking about coaching people, we're just telling, you might go, hey, Robbo, come on, blah, blah, blah. My reaction to that, I've got to acknowledge it and I've got to action on it. And if you feel like it's dropping, like which happens in games because the emotions take over, you might find yourself 2-3-0 down, you give the players the ability to stop the session and refocus. And as a coach, then you go in and listen. What are they saying? Can you maybe add little bits? The other team then, who are a bit complacent, you might counter coach there. But basically what you're doing is you're handing over those behaviours to the players. And you have to be really consistent with it. And it's a long process and it takes time. But we had massive success. And I took it into Chelsea, where I found that was an issue, the intrinsic motivation there. And again, I had massive success. We went 5 months unbeaten, and we had some real progression from players. And I say a lot of it was down to that, not down to tactical coaching, because they knew a lot of stuff. It was more around that, taking control of those behaviours around the session.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to sort of, like you say, when you go in deeper on it, for stuff that sounds not basic. I don't want to say the word basic, but basic. A lot of the stuff around it is around the positive reinforcement. And everybody, doesn't matter what you do, whether you're a football player or whether you're a mechanic, if you do a job well done, to be told well done by your colleague or your teammate, whatever, feels great. And I know it's obviously something that currently we're trying to utilise with our under 19 scholarship players. Alex, you've obviously spoken a lot about it's sort of at the beginnings at the moment, but you've spoken a little bit, haven't you, about the positives already. And like you said, it does take time, and you have got to stick with it. But the positives that are already coming from instilling that within the players.
It's really interesting because as much as we want to develop football players on the pitch, we want to develop good human beings off it. And using kind of this framework is more about the psychological and social side. And they'll go off the pitch and they'll be really good business people or innovators or whatever they want to be. But it's just showing those good standards and driving those good standards, but just consistently doing it. And it's something that we've been practicing, and they've been absolutely loving it. And it's really good to see them develop those traits. So firstly, I just want to say thank you for kind of opening my eyes to that.
It's a pleasure. And the challenge comes, Alex, is it's like anything. Nothing's linear or perfect. So you're seeing progression right now, but you could, the 5-0 defeat could be round the corner, and then everyone and the reaction can be is, what, it didn't work. Well, but it takes time. But what I would say is, there's loads of talk around game models now and methodology and all this thing, and it's going, well, of course they're important, but if you've got your game model, then you then look and go, but what are the elite behaviours needed behind that game model to drive that game model? So, because what your game model is loads of actions. You want loads of things happening. That's your game model. So we could talk about inverted fullbacks and whatever. But whatever your game model is, there's behaviours that need to be driven around it. And especially when you're under pressure and things aren't quite... We know football can be really random. You can be losing a game 1-0 when you've done so many things right. So... It's more around that. It's not saying that you don't have a game model and you don't have tactics. There needs to be behaviours. Now, who's driving those behaviours behind that? Now, my belief is if the players are driving that on a match day, it's a hell of a lot more powerful than if you're having to drive it, because you can't. You know, I have managed in front of 55,000 people and they can't hear you. You know, so it's absolutely fundamental, and you're right, Joe. It is, the process is simple, but being consistent with it and handing those over to the players is the difficult bit. And the difficult bit is when you've had that game where results haven't quite gone how you want, is being able to dissect it, the good, from the bit that needs improving. And again, that goes into how you do your analysis, which we had a way of doing that, and looking and going, look boys, we lost 3-2 or whatever it looks like, but this is us doing things really, really well, and this is where we may become unstuck. And then you take that back to the training and make them understand I'll guarantee you how important those things are, you know. And I've had players where, and it's not about making everyone the same. Not everyone's a Roy Keane, you know. Not everyone's going to run around driving people, but I do believe leadership skills will manifest in different ways. Whether you're someone who shows it in just how you perform, even though you're quiet, you know, or whether you are someone who shows it in how you perform and you drive it. But I believe if you do it from young enough, all players are capable of some kind of communication as they mature. You know, it might not look like fist pumping, but they are capable of a well done, or saying to each other, come on, we're better than this. Do you know what I mean? And that's what we're talking about here. But it has to, and taking those responsibility. But they need to know, first and foremost, how it feels and what it's like. You know, but if it's built around your game model, it's so powerful. So powerful.
I think, like, the players, don't get me wrong, we all want to win, and winning is a good habit, but we're talking about the ages that we've probably sort of coached at, is mainly its development first and foremost, is not winning at all costs. So have you had like any challenges or any sort of kind of players rebel around your framework, and what, like, from being at Wimbledon, from being at Chelsea, or has it been quite smooth sailing? Everyone's bought into it.
Yeah, no, there's been challenge. Trying to think of, I had a lad at Chelsea, couple, I won't mention it, but one who's playing in the Premier League who at first struggled with the demand side, just opened up. But again, I'm proud of that, because it showed I built a culture where they felt comfortable to come and talk to me. Mm-hmm. He said, Rob, I just struggle around the demands, it's not me. So we just talked about it. And I said, well, this is what it could look like for you. How do you feel about that? And he was like, yeah, all right, no, I can do that. And I said, look, it might take a bit of time, just have a go. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And one session I saw him and I just had a little, caught his eye, had a smile, and he smiled. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It takes time, he was a quiet lad. Yeah. I had another one who didn't enjoy the time out element of training and the refocus. He said, like, it's not real to the game. Yeah. I said, okay. So, again, love the fact that, you know, you've got an environment where players are coming to you because that's what you want. And he just said, I just don't think you can't stop a game, Robbo. And I went, I know you can't. I said, so I explained to him, I said, but if you've got to look at it like, I explained to him, we've all played in football matches when you feel it's getting away from you. Yeah. So one, I don't totally agree with you that you can't stop a game. So we talked about when you could stop a game. Mm-hmm. And I know people might have a go at me here, but you can stop a game. Your keeper can go down, right? Yeah. And I said, and it might even be worth a player going down. And he goes, yeah, but then they're off for 30. I said, yeah, but maybe that trade-off, having a player off for 30 seconds might be a better trade-off than feeling like you're losing control of a game. And he went, okay. I said, and also you've got to think about it. The better you are at doing that and coming up with solutions and going back out, and then you get the demands right and the positive rule, then the refocus thing will start to disappear anyway. I said, because that's what you're aiming towards. You're aiming towards the fact that you don't have to stop it because there's so much positive reinforcement because the behaviours are high. And when there's not, the demands are there and they're acting on it. You don't need that. So he was like, brilliant, got it. And I've got some brilliant clips where West Ham at home, we're dominating and we're going, it's us and City challenging, and we go 1-0 down and my centre forward goes down, nothing wrong with him at all. And the boys just come over to me and they just felt like they needed something because they'd been really good for half an hour. And they just come over and it was almost, and I went, boys, nothing's changed. Just get back out there, make sure you win the first duel, blah, blah, blah. And we just had a little chat, basically. And they went out there and they equalised within about 45 seconds. And happened at Fulham away, again, really important game. We're 3-0 up. They come back to 3-2. Again, the centre forward, he's a bright lad. He went down again, and they come over. Now, sometimes they would use it and they would come together, but this is where we say the difference between feel like you need the coach and when you don't. And at this time, they felt like they did need something. So they come over, and it was really simple. JT spoke to a couple of the centre backs, things he'd noticed, and I just literally went, lad, just sink in, stop sinking. They're not quicker than you. Like you've just dropped 15 yards. So you're letting the pressure of the 3-2 go away from our behaviour, what we do. And they went back out, things changed, we got the fourth and we won the game. So, and that was brilliant because it showed the lad who come and spoke to me that you can use it. So, you've had challenges along the way, but as long as you know why you're doing it and you've built that culture, but I'd say first and foremost, make sure you've built a culture where players feel that they can talk to you. Yeah. Because it's important, and that's why for me the reflection process should be a two-way thing. And I've had people ridicule me in terms of how I reflect on sessions. I get the players to reflect on our sessions, and I've had people go, "You get the players to tell you what they thought of your session." I go, "Well, mad that, isn't it? how mad is that? Actually wanting a player to know what he thought of your session." I'm being a bit sarcastic, obviously, but. I said, 100%. I want to know what they think. Yeah. I want to know, do they think, are they being developed? Are they, because we can all put on sessions and pat ourselves on the back and go in and think we're doing a great job, and the players are going, not sure where, So that's how I believe education of players should look. It's a two-way process.
In terms of, I just wanted to sort of touch on that a little bit further. In terms of how you would review that in terms of the player ownership and how that was going. Maybe like you sort of said earlier at that moment in time that it might be going well at the moment, but you said the next week you could lose 5-0 and it does it then throw it up in the air. But I was sort of just a little bit interested to find out more about how you would review that process, whether that would be with your staff or whether that would be just like you spoke a lot then about having that open relationship with the players and having them review the sessions or the games that you've played in. But just wanted to sort of just try and dive deeper into that, how you would almost self-assess how it was going, that programme, and then also how it was, how they assessed it as well. Yeah,
I mean, it's, again, because we built a culture, Joe, of it was always two-way feedback. So it was like constant processes anyway. It's just how we worked. So then, I've got to say we had so much success with it that the losses didn't happen that often. And when they did, we very rarely, to be fair, the 5-0 didn't really happen. But if they did, what I would say was it made it so much easier to dissect the game and actually pinpoint why it happened. And sometimes, and I know people won't want to hear, sometimes you just lose a game, right? To a bit of brilliance or, the player already knows when he's walked off, Gaffer, sorry, I switched off at the far post. Do you know what I mean? So, and what you find, it takes away all that analysis paralysis because players have taken more ownership. They literally, but when they get in the dressing room, they're literally going, sorry, and the lads are going, the lads are obviously gutted, but they know. What I would say is we didn't get to a stage where you had that performance and you walked off and you went, what happened there? Like where it was so low. It didn't happen. It might have been one or two individuals and you think, well, we'll deal with them on Monday. But more often than not, it was players just saying, it's my fault, I know I didn't get tight or I didn't do that, because they realised, because they understood what was important, And it was very similar at Chelsea. And I kind of took it to the next level around the analysis anyway, so I'd got the processes there around the elite behaviours and the rule of three, and the next bit then was how can I make more analysis more interactive and more enjoyable and more educational rather than just sitting there and showing clips and players, us as coaches, taking the fact that you think it's gone in by a nod and saying a nod isn't good enough. You know, I deliver something and I go, "You got it, lads?" And they go, because when's the player? And they go, "No, tell me again." They're not, are they? You know, we did get to a stage where they would be a bit like, "Can you show me again?" But you know what I'm saying? It's got to be deeper than that.
Yeah.
So the analysis process was the next stage. You're kind of bringing your game model to life through elite behaviours, but how can you bring your game model to life through analysis as well? And that's when we built this interactive brick wall that I've talked to you about, where again you're looking at best practice and you're learning through best practice, but the players are talking to you about the best practice. So you're showing them a clip, they're telling you, this is going to sound mad to people listening, what brick it is in the wall, which is an action. It might be quickest recovery, and they're telling you why and why it's there as best practice and why it's gone on that clip has gone on there. And at the same time, we'd have clips where we'd go, "This hasn't made the analysis brick wall. This hasn't got on there. Tell us why." And it might have been, say, a counter-attacking, and they go, "It was great, but our locking shape behind the ball's not good enough. So-and-so should have tucked round." So, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, so your game model's just growing and growing in strength, but more importantly, they're understanding the important actions that are going to get them a career or take them to the next level, which is what this is all about at the end of the day. You know, I always say, fundamentally, what we're trying to do as coaches, we're trying to hand a player over to a manager, and that manager will look and go, "Has he got a bit more quality than I've already got? Great, and can I trust him?" And if you can do those two things, then you're launching someone's career.
At TSC Football Academy, during the school holidays, we offer a variety of soccer schools, complete player workshops and one-to-one sessions. These sessions run across the southeast of Kent. To find out more, head to our website and socials. Links are in the description. So earlier on, obviously, we spoke a lot about obviously your time at Wimbledon and stuff like that, and getting the buy-in not just from the players but also from the adults, from the parents and the grown-ups that are supporting those children. Could you maybe give us, what, in your opinion, what you think is the best way, or some of the best ways to support your child through their sort of football journey?
As a parent?
As a parent, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think... I'm trying to think of the best way I can swing this round. So I think if you look at it the other way and you go, you guys know what you want from the parent, I think it's more that way. So I think if you go what your expectations are from the parent, not when they're at home, in terms of what you would like to see, because you know. So what you don't want mixed messages from the parent. So if you're their coaches and you're giving them messages, you don't want the parent giving them opposite messages. If you want this environment of positivity and lots of positive reinforcement, well, you'd like that to be carried on with the parents as well. And anything else. So I look at that at Wimbledon. We wanted that kind of culture. So then you look at how you deal with the parents. And I think the biggest thing for me with parents is parents just want to see honesty. And I think once they know that their child's best interest is at your heart, and I think, and this is my big thing, is, you know, I don't want to get too deep on coaching, but this is my worry when we've got too many chats about game models and method, like tactical methodologies and that. We're here to develop players, right? And I think players, no matter how age they are, see through coaches if it's not all about the player. And I think parents see through coaches if it's not all about the player. So I'm not saying every parent totally agreed with me, but what I would say is I think every parent knew that I had their boys at the time, obviously their son's best interest at heart. And I think once they know that, you can have those really honest conversations. And I think that's the most important thing, is having those honest conversations. And then I think you become aligned with the parents. And once you've got that, if there's things that you don't think are appropriate for your culture or what you want, you can have those conversations. And I think as coaches, you guys, I know you're great at what you do. You'll feel if there's a misalignment. You'll feel if there's mixed messages, because you go, why is he doing that when I want him to, like, oh, and I think it's right to do that. And I think that's the key thing is that, but I think, you know, and obviously I get that feeling from you, it's all about the player. So my big thing is player first, player last. It's all about the player. And I think people see that when it's about you and your own progression as a coach, and when they see that it's totally about the players. And I think once you've got that, you can have those honest conversations. And I think they're really important. I think sometimes to be cruel, to be kind, you do have to be a little bit cruel and honest. Because I think when you all know, when a parent knows exactly where their son is in terms of their development plan or whatever it looks like, then you can action on it. You don't want to be fluffy. I don't think there's any point in being fluffy. And I think it's important to know where you think their child sits and what your plan is around it, and then you can work together, because it should be in this case a freeway relationship or whatever it looks like.
Yeah, so I deal with parents kind of on a regular basis about just general questions about how their son's doing or how their daughter's doing in terms of their development. And first and foremost, it's always about how are they enjoying their football, because they're still so young. Sometimes we get carried away about, I want them to be in the next step. I want them to be a professional football player. And it's like, ultimately, we want them to have a love of the game. Yeah. And as coaches, I think that's our sort of minimum, is to make sure that they love the game of football. Yeah. And we do that by trying to create positive environments for them to thrive and for them to achieve. Yeah. And having honest conversations with parents is really key and really pivotal to their development.
I was going to say on that, Al, I think you've hit that, but just always the here and now. Yeah. Never ever talk about what, I've heard coaches do that. It was one of the things I had to change at Wimbledon. I sat in one of the parent-player thing, the reviews. So we'd have reviews and you'd hear someone go, oh, and I get it, because as coaches you want to be enthusiastic. Of course you do. You want to, and I had a coach go, oh, if he carries on like he is now, he's doing all the. And I said, oh no, and I had to sort of say, I said, I get it. I said, and he was a good player. I said, you've got, just report on the here and now, how he's doing right here and right now, and what plans you've got, how you see the future looking in terms of what you're doing, what you've got in place. You can't predict whether. Don't start going. Yeah, it might be different if, say, he's 14 and you've got plans to step him up to the 15s, but make sure you have got plans to step him up to the 15s, and that's going to happen. And, but don't start talking about anything that isn't definite or whatever. Just report on how he's doing, what you've been pleased with, what he needs to work on, and your plan around how you're going to do it. That's all they need to know, because once you start promising things or making these, oh, he could be anything he wants and all that nonsense. That's the road you don't want to go around. And you're right. But they do have to be enjoying it. But if you don't mind me saying, I think enjoyment and fun's different. I know I'm being nitpicky here, but you want them. When I think of enjoy, I think you can enjoy your environment, and it can be hard working, and it can be real standards, and it can be. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Sometimes when people go, I want them having fun, then I'll be honest with you, I see fun.
Have a different outlook on that.
Fun makes me feel different. I want them to enjoy it, but for me, enjoyment can be at the end of the session, you're dripping and you've had a right, you know what I mean? Yeah. Fun for me throws up different analogies. I think it's important. You come and you enjoy your work, and you walk in. You get in your car and you go, did you enjoy that? Yeah, I enjoyed that. It was good. I think fun's maybe a different level of if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I think going back to the point you made there, I think over the years we've had plenty of questions, haven't we, from parents to say, oh, is my son, when's he going to get a trial, or when's he going to get a trial at a pro club, or and it's managing those expectations and keeping it real. Like we would never sort of promise to say we're going to give you a trial or get you a trial at a club, because that's something that is unachievable. Yeah. It's out of our control. It's down to the individual. It's down to the player. Yeah. But we'll always try and create an environment for them to reach their full potential, and that's kind of one of our taglines. Going back to what you're saying at Wimbledon, one of our main ones is reach your own individual potential.
Yeah.
And I think that's massive. I think that's important to get the parents to understand that it's not the be all and end all whether they get a trial or not. It's that love of the game.
Yeah.
It's progression at the right time and understanding what's right for them at this moment in time. And like you're saying there, to be here and now.
And you lose the love of the game. What they're searching for is less likely to happen anyway. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you keep the love of the game, and like you said, you're just trying to reach their maximum potential, whatever that looks like, then there's more chance of it happening. But no, 100%. But I think, as you said, it's just managing expectations is what it's all about. You know, definitely.
At TSC Football Academy, we offer a fantastic post-16 football scholarship programme, giving opportunities for full-time football and education. For more information about our programme and for the next trial dates, please look on our website and our socials. So before we met for the podcast, you mentioned a really good story talking about elite behaviours from your experience.
Yeah.
Could you just talk us through one of your experiences that you had with a player? Because I think it's a really powerful message.
Yeah. Well, you again, it sort of kind of goes back to what we're talking about, set pieces, what players find enjoyable, not enjoyable, but at the same time, what is vital. You know, I think we're up to 30% of goals now in the, I don't know if it's the Premier League or all league, come from set pieces, so they're vital, right? And I think any coach out there is always looking for that golden way of coaching set pieces. Is it too long? Is it a bit boring? And again, you look at that and you're going, it's vital. Why are we having to sell this to players when it's so vital? So the story was N'Golo, when I was at Chelsea, N'Golo Kante had been training with us for a few weeks. He was coming back from injury and joining in sessions. And then we were playing Portsmouth first team. So we arranged a game against Portsmouth first team with the 21s. Partly because we wanted the game, but also it was great for him to get 60 minutes of fitness in. So I just remember we'd put the set pieces up, everything, and players have gone out. This was at the training ground at Cobham. Players have gone out, ready for the game, and about 2-3 minutes later, N'Golo's come running back in the dressing room, and I've gone, "You okay?" So I first thought, "Oh no, he's not injured himself." Something. He went, "No, I'm fine, boss, I'm fine." And he goes, "I just need to remember," and he was checking his role in the set pieces. Right. Wow. Now it might sound like something little, but you put this into context because you've worked with young players, and I'm sure sometimes they don't take it serious enough, right? So this is someone who's won the World Cup, who's basically playing to just get his minutes up because of an injury, playing with 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds at best against, no disrespect to Portsmouth, against Portsmouth, yet he knows how important it is to be a great teammate and to carry out his roles and responsibilities, what we're talking about, how vital that is that you don't let your teammates down, that he's come running back in the dressing room because he just wanted to recheck. And I think when we talk, we talk about levels in environments, we talk about levels of coaching, and we talk about levels of player. That's the level. That's the level, that's the humility, the harmony, and the desire to be the best you can be all the time, no matter what the circumstance. And that's the level. That is the level.
No, I really appreciate you sharing that story. Yeah. It just goes to show you the level of detail and the level of player he was. Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
And then so sort of just moving on to sort of finish. Obviously, it's been great having you on today, and we really appreciate you coming down. We always sort of finish with just sort of asking any sort of top tips or words of wisdom you can pass on our players within our academy. We have our one of our taglines, as we spoke about earlier, is helping players to reach their own individual potential. So I just wondered sort of if you had any words of wisdom you could share to any sort of young players that we've got coming through, and what they can be doing to ensure that they are doing all they can to reach their individual potential at whatever level.
Trying to think of, I think, Joe, it's very easy to just come out with words like, be the best you can be. So I think you've probably got to know me a little bit. I'm quite deep on the psychological thing, so I'm trying to think out. I think what the decisions you make every day in life that define you fundamentally. Analogies I've used with certain players is, because I think we make something, I'm probably way off here, but it is something like, we make something like 33,000 decisions a day. It's something ridiculous, and some of those are little ways in, oh, shall I pick up this bottle now, shall I not? Some of them aren't changing your life, right? But then there are decisions that decide how much growth you're going to make. And the analogy I've kind of used with players before is, imagine decisions like opening 5 different doors. You know, you open one door and there's just a flat road. You're just going for a walk. It's just a nice walk. Yeah. You open another door and there's a hill. You know, it's quite a challenge, but not really uncomfortable, but it's a challenge. You open another door and there's a mountain. Like, it's a proper uncomfortable challenge. There's another door and there's a slide. Fun. You're enjoying yourself. You're having a laugh. And then the last door is you resting. And I think it's getting a mixture of those decisions right throughout the day. If you open that door where you're just going for a walk every day, well, you're not going to grow. If you open the door where you're climbing a mountain all the time, that you constantly just doing that, you're going to burn out, and you could end up stressed. And I think it's getting those mixtures right. And it's not just about, we're not just talking about hard work here in terms of how hard you work at training. I just think generally in life, I used it as a cultural example to the lads at Chelsea. I said, like, we get a trialist in, and he's come in, you've got your own little friendship groups, he's sitting down at lunch, you know, the easy door open is the one, and you might just go, all right, mate, and leave him on his own, or someone sit, you know, the more uncomfortable door is speak to him, be the first one who's going to go and speak to him, get him part of the group. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing. And we all have decisions to make every day. And if you get the mixture of those right, if you have enough uncomfortableness, and as coach we support them through that, and at the same time sometimes you do need to open that door and just rest, you know. But you certainly need to open the fun door as well. And I think that's it. If you want to reach your potential, just think about the decisions you're making every day. I mean, probably the biggest compliment I had from him as a player who left Chelsea, I rang him up to see how he was, and he went to me, he said, "Do you know what, Robbie, you're like a little thing on my shoulder." And sometimes I think about, oh, do I fancy it? And then I think, no, go and do it, challenge yourself. And he said, do you know what I mean? And it was a massive compliment, because we can all do it, can't we? Sometimes we say, oh, blimey, and we don't open that door when we do need to go and push ourselves a bit further. And then other times you do need to go, no, I've had enough now, I need to go and have some family time or whatever, and I need to go and... Is that making sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the biggest thing, is you know, have a purpose and know why you're making decisions. But if you don't take yourself out of your comfort zone, you're not going to grow. But you need a mixture. I think you need a mixture, and just be thinking about that all the time. So training day, let's make sure I'm up that hill or that mountain. Do you know what I mean? But then other times, let's make sure I'm getting the other bits right as well. I think that would be it.
Mark, it's been a real pleasure having you on and having you down. Just to listen to you speak, and your experiences have been really eye-opening, and I hope our listeners really enjoy it. So thank you so much.
Cheers, Alex. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Robbo, for coming down. We really appreciate it. We'll be obviously following your journey really closely here, and we wish you all the best. But thank you so much.
Lovely. Cheers, Joe. Thanks, Alex. Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.